So, in a flash, it's going to be Christmas break. Yay! And Christmas being about Jesus, it seems only fitting that we would talk about it as something, since something is also about Jesus. And so, this week and next week, we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about the Christmas story. And then the third week, the week before we go home, we're going to do our Christmas party before everybody leaves for break. So that'll be a night where there'll be some fun, interactive stuff going on and probably food. So you won't want to miss that. And hopefully t-shirts. We'll keep posted on that. The Christmas story is something that most of us, if not all of us, have heard about 1,011 times. And so sometimes it's really easy for us to hear this story, and it's just sort of like wash over us, and we forget it ever happened. We're like, yeah, whatever. And so my hope is that we can, these next 2 weeks, just kind of take the Christmas story and pretend like we're just picking it up and kind of looking at it from a couple different angles. There's a lot of facets to this story. There's a lot of things going on in this story. There's a lot of layers to this story. And so the big thing is, you've probably seen in somebody's yard, or in your student home, or in your grandma's house, or somewhere, you've seen a nativity set, okay? And you've got the manger, which in most cases is like a little hut, which it probably was in the side of a mountain, or like a cave, or whatever. You have Mary and Joseph, you have baby Jesus, neatly clothed, lying in a manger. You have some random farm animals. You have shepherds, and then you have these three guys called the Magi, or the wise men, who show up, and that's all neatly arranged, and they're all facing the same direction usually, and it's nice, and not allowed to touch it. It's not a toy, it's decoration. The question is, how do we get here? How do we get here? Like, if I was going to start a religion, or if I was to start a movement, and I was like, here's where it begins. We're going to start with a baby in a feeding trough in this random part of the world, and then these shepherds are going to come, and then these guys from the Far East are going to come. They're going to bring these random gifts, gold, frankincense, and myrrh, and then there you go. You'd be like, this sounds like a really weird way to get this thing started. And the thing is, the story doesn't begin here. The story begins way back at the beginning. And so since we're in this like dramatic kind of space, we're going to talk a little bit. I'm just going to dramatically go through, kind of water ski through the story up to this point. Okay? So bear with me. In the beginning, there was nothing. And God said, let there be light. And there was light. Light. The kind of light that travels at 186,000 miles per second. That kind of light. And so then there's the earth, and then there's water, and sky, and land, and plants, and birds, and fish, and animals, and mankind. And God creates mankind in His image. Male and female, He created them. And He breathes His breath into their lungs, He gives them life, and He says, I want you to rule over everything I've created. We're going to live in a relationship together. I'm going to hang out with you. We're going to walk and talk together. The only thing, you need all this stuff, just not this one tree. Okay? Just trust me. Okay? Just don't eat this one tree. They enjoy that kind of life for who knows how long, we're not told, but at some point, they decide, and they're tricked, or they're tempted, or whatever, but they eat the fruit. Then they realize that they've been naked all along, but now being naked is somehow a bad thing. Okay? And so then God has to send them out of the garden because now they're broken. Now they've rebelled against God. Now they've sinned. And so they're not the great thing that God intended for them to be. They're close, but they're not quite there. And if they stay, and they keep eating from this tree called the tree of life, they will be trapped eternally like that. And so God, painfully, mournfully, has to send them outside of the garden, outside of His presence. And so begins this long journey of God trying to rescue and redeem and bring His people back to Him, and His people doing everything they can to get away from God and make it all about themselves. It starts very early. You have Cain murders his brother Abel. We're not even a generation out of the Garden of Eden, and already we've got violence. It keeps on escalating. It gets so bad that God's like, you know what, things are so bad, we're gonna start over. Okay, there's gonna be this flood, but there's this guy Noah, and he's righteous, and God says, Noah, and Noah's like, yeah, and he's like, why don't you build a boat? And Noah's like, what's a boat? And he's like, well, it's actually an ark. And Noah's like, what's an ark? And he's like, well, I'll give you directions. It's a cubit. And he's like, well, what's a cubit? He's like, it's a hand. It's like this, kind of, from here to here. You'll measure it out. It'll be all right. And then I want you to take 2 of every kind of animal, and you're going to put them in this ark. Well, how am I going to get them to show up? I'll take care of that. So one day, they're building this ark, and all of a sudden, all these animals start showing up. They put them on the boat. It rains, it rains, it rains, it rains, 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 rains. Everything, it's always weird to me, sidetrack. My son is 4 and he has a little toy Noah's Ark from like Fisher Price makes or something. It's weird to me because it's such a crazy story and such a painful story to picture him, in the living room playing with Noah's Ark and all the animals and Noah and his wife are on the ark, and they're all smiling and happy, but everybody outside the ark is dead. Right? But people paint this in like babies' rooms and stuff. It's kind of weird. So the ark lands. God sends a rainbow, promising that he will never flood the earth again. Noah and his family start things up, but then things continue to unravel. There's this tower that people try to build because they're like, we'll make ourselves like God. We don't need God. We'll build this tower to the heavens. And God's like, no, you're missing the point. The point is not to make you the center of human existence. That's me. The point is to know me. And so God diversifies their languages, their races, scatters them across the world. And so they keep on growing, and God chooses the people. He calls this guy Abraham, and he says, Abraham, I want you to come follow me. Leave everything, come follow me. And he says, through you, all the nations of the world are going to be blessed. So all the way back in Genesis chapter 12, which if you have a Bible is all the way back here on the left somewhere, right at the beginning, God's plan was for all the nations of the world to know him. God's plan, God's purpose, unlike a lot of other religions, is not centered on one specific race, one specific ethnicity. It's for everybody. So Abraham says, how's this going to happen? Because I'm old, and my wife is old, and we don't have any children. So how are we going to be this great nation if it's just us? We're going to die of old age, and then the nation's going to die. And God says, let me take care of it. So and when he says that, Abraham's wife Sarah, she laughs. So they give birth to a son later. His name is Isaac. Isaac in Hebrew means laughs. So their names back then meant something. The prophet Isaiah had a son named, don't ever name your kid this, Maher Shalal Hashbaz, which meant like the Lord has forsaken my people, or something like that. That'd be a terrible name to go into middle school with. But anyway. So Abraham gives birth to Isaac. As a test of his faith, he's asked to sacrifice Isaac. He almost goes through with it, and God stops him and says, I know you trust me. And so then, from Abraham, we have, after Abraham, Isaac has a family, but then he only has 2 kids. But then his son Jacob has 12 sons. Okay, one of them is named Joseph. He gets this coat with all these colors, and they make a Broadway musical about it. And it's called Joseph Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. That's not in the Bible. And so, from all these 12 tribes, they start multiplying. They wind up in the land of Egypt. They wind up, though, being slaves in the land of Egypt. So for 400 years, 400 years, a long time, they're slaves. And God shows up to this guy named Moses in a burning bush. Okay, so picture this: this bush on fire. Okay, but just so on fire. Okay, all right. The bush is on fire, it's not burning up, and it starts talking. So bush is on fire, starts talking to Moses. Moses is understandably freaked out. And the first thing it tells him is to take off his shoes, which is weird, but he says you're standing on holy ground. And so God calls Moses. He says, go, get my people out of Egypt. And Moses is like, I don't want to go. And he's like, you need to go. And then he goes, and Pharaoh's like, I'm not going to let your people go. And he's like, you need to. And so God sends all these plagues upon the land of Egypt because Pharaoh won't give up God's people. And so there's all sorts of things. The Nile River turns to blood, which is kind of gross. Then there's all these frogs everywhere. Then there's gnats, and there's flies, and there's darkness, and there's hail. And there's all sorts of things. And the last thing is there's a plague on the firstborn of everybody in Egypt. Which means that the firstborn of everybody in Egypt is going to die. But God says this. if you don't want your firstborn to die, then take a lamb, take the blood, and put it on the top of your door frame and the sides of the door. If you do that, when I send my angel to claim the firstborn, he'll pass over your house. He'll pass by, and you'll be spared. You'll be rescued, you'll be redeemed. So this happens. Finally, Pharaoh says, you know what, fine, take the people, get out of here. So they go, Pharaoh changes his mind, chases them to the sea, God parts the sea, they go through, the water closes back, Pharaoh's army does the dead man's float, and then God continues to work through people like David. David slays Goliath, David becomes king. Solomon's super wise, Solomon builds a temple for God, but then Solomon starts to go after other things besides God. And this is the story over and over and over again. And so God's people wind up in exile. They're trapped in this other land. And so the prophets, God gives them a message. It says at some point, a virgin is going to have a baby. Which, okay, get your head around that for a second. And he's going to be called Emmanuel, which means God with us. And so, when we get to this story, there's thousands and thousands and thousands of years of expectation in this moment. When God comes to a virgin named Mary and says, you're going to have a baby. And she says, how is this possible? Because I'm a virgin. And he says, the Holy Spirit's going to make it happen. Now she's engaged to this guy named Joseph. So picture this conversation, okay? Mary. Let's pretend like it's taking place now. Okay? And they're not texting, but they're actually talking face to face. So Joe, I'm pregnant. What? Yeah, it's God's baby though, it's cool. Right? It's God's baby. What? And so Joseph, understandably, is going to divorce Mary. Now, here's the interesting thing. In those days, Mary should have been stoned to death. Because if she's pregnant and she's not married, that means she had an affair, so she should be stoned to death. Joseph, it says he's a righteous guy. And so he's just going to divorce her quietly. He's not going to make a big deal out of it. He's just going to be like, listen, this is not cool, but I don't want any part of this, but I'm not going to have her stoned to death. And God appears to me in a dream and says, listen, this child is from me. She's telling the truth. And so Joseph takes Mary, be his wife, and then the time comes for the baby to be born, but they have to go to this city called Bethlehem because there's a census. So they have to go to like their own town where their family is from. And so when they get there, now you may have heard the story told like this, that there was no room in the inn. And there's little Christmas pageants where there's like the innkeeper part, right? And the innkeeper's like, oh, there's no room in the inn. You can't stay in the inn. And so the thing is, there wasn't a guest room for them, which means that they got there and nobody in the family wanted anything to do with them because the whole thing was scandalous. And so they wind up in the manger where the animals sleep. They wind up giving birth to Jesus and placing him in a food trough. Okay? They didn't like sanitize it. This is a messy, crazy story. And the thing about it is, life is messy. Life is crazy. Life isn't neat. It isn't sanitary. And we try to make Christmas that way. We put up all the lights, and we put up the trees, and we want all the decorations look perfect. But Christmas at its essence, even though we have these neat little nativity sets, I like this one because it said "Yay" on it. That was interesting. It's something really, really messy. God came into your mess and my mess, like He promised He would, to be with us. Emmanuel means God with us. And so that's why He came. That's why Jesus comes. Later in the story, Jesus rises from the dead, but that doesn't happen if He doesn't first come as a baby. It doesn't happen if He doesn't first come as a baby. He can't be what we need Him to be if He doesn't come. And He can say to us, I know what you're going through, because He started at the beginning. It would have been really easy for Him to show up fully grown as like Superman or something, right? He'd be like, listen, this is what needs to happen. But he doesn't do that. He shows up as a baby. And think about how fragile a baby is. Think about how fragile a baby is. Think about how easy it is for a baby to pass away. I'm not trying to be morbid. I'm trying to show you the risk that God took in coming the way He came. The extent that God was willing to go to. When we were doing everything in our power to run the opposite direction, God was willing to come into our mess for us. You're going to break into groups here, and you're going to answer some questions, and you're going to ask some questions if you have any. And all you're going to talk about is just if anything stood out to you tonight about this story. You're just going to talk about that. Then if you have any questions about this story, you'll give them to the leaders of your group, and I'll address them next week. And then the last thing is, just as a fun kind of thing, what's the best gift you remember receiving for Christmas? And I'm going to say this not to be corny, not to be crazy. I've received a lot of really cool gifts for Christmas, okay? One year I got a Wii, like back when Wii's were cool, I got a Wii for Christmas. The best gift I've ever received is the fact that God came, Emmanuel, God with us. No lie, no BS, not trying to say stuff because this is youth group. That's the best gift I've ever received. And so if you are a 9th and 10th grade girl, you are going to follow Mr. Cooper. You're just going to go right out there and around into the black box room. Or just right out the door. So 9th and 10th grade girls go that way. And then when you're done with Mr. Cooper, you'll scan out.